This is another episode of Design Your Dream Home with Doug and Steve. And now the architects, Doug Pat and Stephen Chung.
You are watching or listening to the Design Your Dream Home podcast with Doug and Steve. I'm Steve, and that's Doug. Good morning, Doug.
Stephen, nice to see you today, buddy.
Did I do the title correctly this time?
I believe you nailed it this time. It's only been like 30.
I always say dream house, but dream home, dream home.
Yes, it's home.
Today we have a guest. I'm so looking forward to it. I've known him of his work and writing for a long time, and it's awesome that we have this sort of podcast thing so we can actually meet him and talk to him. It's a duo Dickinson.
Hello.
So duo, welcome.
How are you guys?
Awesome.
Good to see you, man.
Good.
So duo, we joked about your resume, and it's just so enormously long, and you've done so many things. So I'm going to give you a chance maybe to sort of introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I write for a bunch of different places. I've written 8 books, and the eighth book came out in the fall. It's actually not about architecture. It's about New England with a co-author. It's quite great. But I also write for something called Common Edge, which is maybe my favorite, I guess you'd call it blog, but it really is a cyber magazine about architecture. And it's mostly for architects, but it's also for non-architects too. And I also write for something called Mockingbird, which is a very interesting Episcopalian blog, really, and has mostly younger people on it. So in dealing with, I was at the Mockingbird conference last Friday, and I was teaching at Building Beauty in Sorrento, Italy, the week before that. And in dealing with that demographic, it became clear to me, more than it usually is, that at 62, I am officially old. Huh. So when you're old, as opposed to you two guys who are not old, I can tell you that there's obviously, you lose some cred because you're of the past and not of the future. But you also gain some cred in that you actually have done so much stuff in that resume that you can actually say, well, you can do that, or have you thought about this? Because you've done a lot of things, and you've also worked with a lot of other people. So if you've worked with a lot of other people, especially clients, and we've done 800 projects that are built and probably over 1,000 in total, and we've worked with probably over 100 not-for-profits. That's kind of the B-roll of what we do, is we work with a lot of organizations that have no money, and so we work for free until they can get some, and then we'll take what they get. When you do that, you sort of build up a reservoir of relevance. And I'm thinking, what I understand about what you're doing, which I find to be incredibly great, you're connecting non-architects to architects in a way which is accessible and easy and free and just productive, as opposed to pontificating or elitist or stratifying. What you're doing is really making what we do as architects directly accessible to the people that need it the most, the people that are afraid of us because they really think that we take their money and spend it on what we want and tell them to drop dead and it's their house. So that's really, and that's, that meme, that cliche is actually true, that many architects come into this thinking that they're going to do a house for someone so they can actually do a quote unquote real building, which is, 30 years ago, at one of the great recessions, one of the old architects wrote in the AIA newsletter in Connecticut, I just discovered after 20 years in the career that home design is actually, can make you a little bit of money and can tide you over until real work comes along.
Real work.
And he actually used the phrase real work. Now, to me, and I'm sure to you, homes are the realest of work an architect can ever do, because the home is the biggest asset and threat in anybody's life. It's their largest piece of clothing. It is this thing of extreme existential importance to human beings, to families, to individuals. It is a direct extension of who you are, and what you've done your whole life is the home you make for your family. So in what you're doing, you are the logical extension of that. You are actually creating something which is on this weird surfing of the internet thing, which allows human beings that are thinking about dealing with designing a house to see how the sausage is made, to see actually who can actually help them. And for that opportunity, I'm really grateful for you, not just to have me on, which I am grateful for, but for the people that are watching this that aren't architects and they can see that architects are people too, is actually, even though we're all kind of males, we should have, is there a female out there? I want to have females on these programs.
We had one last week.
Well, good. Have more, and have more people of color. And basically, it'd be great if architecture was really just like everything else. We had to stop thinking about all the silliness of this strange profession. Because I'm at 62, you know, I was in a class of architects that ended up being almost exclusively white males at Cornell. I mean, when we graduated, it was 90% white guys, and you know, that's just limits our relevancy for the rest of the world, and it's unnecessary, because the truth is, obviously, anybody can do anything, and I'm glad you guys are promoting that.
I'm colorful.
Well, you're of that place of almost a Benetton aspect, which I like.
That's why I do this podcast with him.
So, dude, that was fantastic. But you know, we should back up 1 second. And first of all, you are an architect. You're based in Connecticut, and you do lots of residential work.
It's the core of the practice. I mean, if we've done 800 things, probably 500 of them have been homes.
Mm-hmm. And what I was so amazed by, and I was a long time ago when you said something about there's no scale or a budget necessarily that limits you. I think it's more like if a homeowner has a problem, you're there to help them with their problem. It could be a porch renovation. Well,
the biggest thing is, and this is the real, you know, one of the things that I was saying, what I admire you for is this universal access you have in this platform, that anybody can tune in, and there's no fee, and there's no form, and there's no justification of their need. Here, in what I've done in Connecticut for 40 years, is equated what I'm doing to the emergency room doctor. The truth is, when somebody comes to the doctor and they've got a cut in their arm, the doctor doesn't look at the arm and say, "Oh, that's only an inch long, we're not going to accept you." No, or you say, you know, my stomach really hurts. They don't look at you and say, "Well, you're not throwing up, so I think you should probably just, you know, go to CVS and get some prescription." No, they look at you. So I actually have annoyed architects over the years. I literally go and talk at the person's place, whether it's a family or a business or whatever. I go to them for free, and I talk to them for nothing. And I take my time to get the work presented to them that might even be, you don't need an architect. What I do is try to enhance my credibility by not promoting my indispensability. I don't view my role as an architect as one to propagandize our usefulness like a life insurance salesman or a real estate broker. The truth is, you don't need an architect to do much. You can always have an engineer. You can always do stuff yourself. In home design, only 5% of all homes in America have anything to do with an architect at all. At all. 2% actually have an architect as their architect. 2%. It's the largest thing of a category that's built in the country. At least, I mean, the lowest level it ever was 300,000 of those things a year for 1 year about 8-10 years ago. Now it's about 1 million again. And at one time it was going to be 3 million during the building boom. And the truth is that more homes are built than anything else, and we are the least relevant as architects to people that are doing it. And mostly it's because we don't know really how to build as well as builders do. We don't know what costs are as well as homeowners and builders do. We know what looks good and what feels good and what actually is good for us, the choir that we're singing to. But we really don't understand that if you're going to be a singer and you don't have people listening to you, you know, you're like the tree that falls in the woods. Does anybody actually ever hear you? So there are, especially now in this profession, where there's an enormous capacity to make very, very beautiful, very, very real things on the internet that actually feed that sense of need that designers have to create beauty, but feed it for themselves, to themselves, in a small group. Mm-hmm. The potential for us to become irrelevant in the world of artificial intelligence is greater than it's ever been. And with 6,000 graduates every year with an architecture degree, and with the AIA's chief economist saying in the Architect magazine in January that there are 2,500 jobs per year and 6,000 graduates. That 3,500 misfit, those 3,500 people that he says, and I think it's far more than that. I think he's being very optimistic. Those 3,500 people that have gotten at least $200,000 or $300,000 of spent or in debt investment in this profession that have no career are essentially devoting themselves to beauty in a way which is great for the cause of beauty, but is bad for the cause of architecture. And if you're building 1 million homes a year and literally say, I'm going to make it up, but say 20,000 of them are touched by an architect, there's plenty of room for architects to have jobs, but there is not necessarily the room unless we become relevant to the average homeowner. So even if we wanted to get 10% and we had 100,000 homes, think about that, 10%, 100,000 homes, as opposed to 20,000, I think it's a self-solving problem, but we have to change the way architects are educated, which is why I work at Building Beauty in Sorrento, Italy, and why I write the books, and why I've always written the book since 1983, is to take the work of architects and make it so that human beings can touch it, just like you're doing right now. And that idea that human beings can access us is as relevant to me as what clothing you wear, what food you eat, because shelter is as elemental as clothing and as food for the average person. Everybody has a home, but almost no one has an architect. I mean, we all go to doctors. We all, even 20 or 40% of us go to financial planners to deal with our IRAs or deal with our insurance or deal with our whatever money we have to invest. But so few people contact architects about the most elemental things in their lives that it shows that there's something wrong in the profession. And the good news is that with things like what you're doing, there's a way of actually connecting to us. There's a way of actually being meaningful to people's lives by being open to helping them. And so I see every single person we get a call from, I go to see them. And before there was an internet, I would actually bring a slide projector with a self-projecting screen and actually show people my slides. The best one ever, by the way, you guys will appreciate this, the best one ever. I have an article in the New York Times in 1994. We get, over 10 years, we get 700 phone calls based on that article. It was a front page thing. It was a very nice thing. One of them I go to is a very nice woman in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is fairly high up in self-perception. I go there and I show her about the 10th or 12th slide, and she's looking like I'm showing her child pornography. It's like it is the end of the world for her to watch my work. And I basically say to her, should I stop? She says, yes, I think you should.
Wow.
Because it's just, if you show your slides to 700 people, one person's going to truly hate what you do.
What you're talking about, I did a talk a year ago, and one of the things I talked about was this. I believe it's a problem of pain. That is, we go to doctors when we're in pain. We call a lawyer when we're suffering, we're in pain. Right. It's a different kind of pain, but you don't call an architect because there really isn't the kind of pain that you understand or you're used to, right? You have to go through the process and suffer through it to understand how truly painful it is if you don't have somebody helping you design and build a house. And most people don't have the luxury of getting to that point. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think pain is one way to put it, and pain could be a leaky roof, and pain could be the furnace doesn't work, and pain could be so there's a phalanx of help out there for people that are in true pain with their houses. But I would say that what we have not communicated to people, and I think we're the ones that are responsible. I think it is a canard to say that the building industry, the NAHB or other people have preempted us and have, or House, it says the best way to design your home is through House. That's their motto, which I find to be just, heinous. But the alternatives to us are just alternatives. Instead, what we offer in the AIA, and I'm now, by the way, could you guys please stand up and recognize the fact that I am a fellow in the AIA now? So
that's quite an accomplishment, duo. That's amazing.
Change my life, let me tell you right now.
Things have only getting better.
Believe me, I am surfing on the wave of fellowship in the AIA. But anyway, having said that, we are the ones that are at the point that basically should be able to show people through relevant worth, in other words, connecting dollars to beauty and time, dollars, beauty, and time, and beauty, make them all in one sort of continuum with people, to let them know, really just like IKEA has let people know that houses let people know that they have a right to be happy. They have a right to have their home reflect them, or their business reflect them, or just their built environment be part of their value system. Right now, they feel that they are inflicted by the built environment, that they can only live where they are told they can live. And they can buy paint, and they can buy curtains, and they can buy the IKEA desk and build it, but they can't actually control it because the dangers are too great. So what I've tried to do with all those damn books and all the talks and all the rest of it is I've really tried to let people know, you can do this, you need help doing this, but there are people out there who can be part of your life in doing this. And I'm not alone. I mean, there are places like Yestermorrow. I don't know if you know John Connell there. There are places like Sarah Sasanka, who I had on my radio program last week. There are people that have been doing this and saying, time out. You are in control of your home as you are of your diet. You basically can deal with the home in one of two ways. You can either be a victim and cope with it, or you can actually take the time, effort, and money and actually control it. And it doesn't matter if you've got $100,000 or $1. It basically means that you can spend time to correct things if you're willing to spend some money for help. Just like with the lawyers, doctors, and financial planners, and IKEA. If you're willing to spend some money, you can get benefit from it if, and that's only if, architects can show people that there's a benefit to calling them. And the essential benefit that we offer is we can see into people's values and reflect them in what we do. Otherwise, we're saying to people, we have a value we see, and we will show that value to you, and you will purchase it just like you would purchase something from IKEA that already has value that you sign on to. The beauty of an architect is it says, I value you, you value what I can do, and together we make this third thing that is actually of you and of me and is your values in the world. And that's why we've done, we're doing projects right now that are $20,000 projects. And we do projects right now. We're just finishing a project now, which is a $5 million project. So we've done work that's over $1,000 a square foot, and we're doing work right now that's under $200 a square foot. The money is not the issue. It's actually relevance and hard work. It is harder to essentially deny yourself in the reality that other people's places are primary and you are secondary. You can be primary once they've decided you have value, but you are automatically secondary to people because you're not the place. You're the person making the place better. You are not the doctor staunching the wound that's saving your life, just like you were saying. You're not the lawyer keeping you out of jail. You're not the engineer making sure the bridge doesn't fall down. You are the person that is making sure that money is spent in the way that reflects their values. And that's huge.
So, the format of this podcast has been give 3 pieces of advice to a homeowner. So, no, this is great. I love this lead up. But if you said, look, I've got here's 3 things I'm sort of thinking about for a homeowner, 3 things to think about. What would they be? There's no specific order. Just 3 pieces of advice for someone who wants to design their dream home.
There are really only a few that are sort of style blind. The only few that are almost value blind. And I would almost say that the 3 things you have to think about are 1, context. What can you do? And what can you do? One of the things that we forget is that most people in America do not live in places they own. Most people in America live in places someone else owns. So the rental market and the cohabitation market. So what can you control? Can you actually do something in a place someone else owns? And if you can, an architect can help you there. If you own a place or thinking about owning a place, what will the city, the town, the municipality, what will they let you do? What are the actual zoning regs? What are the actual building code regs? What are those limitations? And then lastly, the thing that I'd really encourage people to think about is really money. Money. How much money do you have now? How much money will you have over 10 years? What amount of money reflects what you think is important to you in your home? Because the truth is, architects' traditional role has been, well, you need to do this, and that costs that much money, and you should find that much money, and then I'll work for you. No, not true. That's just not true. It's a self-serving lie that helps architects feel better about themselves, and it's also, and one of the really, at 62, I can tell you, I know from lazy. Okay, the laziness is in every single one of us. The desire for us not to do something because it's inconvenient, hard, threatening, in some way makes us uncomfortable. The desire not to do something you know is probably a good idea is really what harms everybody doing everything. Architecture, making a garden, buying new clothes, getting a car. Laziness ends up coming into something that essentially reflects value. So if you're not that into where you live, and most people really aren't, they would just like it to look nice and be nice. But if you're not that into it, well, then maybe an architect won't help you. And I would say that's probably true. But I would say there's got to be a significant, well, I know it's true, there's a significant minority of human beings, 20, 30, 40% of human beings, where they know that they feel bad about where they are, or know they have hopes that are not reflected in where they are. And they want to be able to do something more than they can do. Well, if you know what the limits are, if you know, can I do this or not? Will the town let me do this or not? Do I have this much money? And you go to an architect you have heard, and it really is, not through the AIA and not through House and not through anything, but through your friends. Have you heard about, is there somebody who's really listens and is good and knows money and knows how to build things? You'll find 2 or 3 humans out there that you meet and talk to. And if they won't meet with you, you shouldn't meet with them. But if they will meet with you and you're able to sort of communicate with them what's going on, and they give you a sense that they have insight that you don't have, well, that's worth money, your money, to help them do things. And if people sort through that and they say, I'm tired of looking at other people's cool stuff on House, maybe I should have my own cool stuff. Maybe I should actually reflect who I like or what I do or what I value in where I am. That simple central message, the one you're projecting in this effort you're doing here now, the stuff I've done in the books, the talks, all the stuff I've done, that is so elementally human that I think it has a future. The question I have, and I would love your thoughts on this, is in this growing explosion of artificial intelligence, not here, which is just communication and access, which is fantastic part of technology, the coming reality of the steroid-enhanced CAD, which is, the building systems and all the rest of it, the Revit and all the rest of it that's taking over the profession. My fear is that what will end up happening is there's going to be a really great software made in 5 or 10 years that says design your own home, and literally you design your own home. Right now there's a design your own home thing, and it's really kind of like Flintstones and basic, and doesn't really make anything that you could actually get a building permit on. But very soon and very soon, there will be a thing you can go to, probably a retail shop in some town, and you'll be able to sit down with a consultant, and they'll sell you for $1,200 a great set of software that over a period of 3 weeks, you'll be able to actually create a set of working drawings for yourself, and you'll be able to take that to the building department, show them, and see that it has the indicia on it, that the engineering software of Bongo programming has stated that this meets all the building codes of somewhere USA. And you'll be able to build something without an architect, a builder, or anything. You'll be able to get permitted, and you'll be safe, and it'll be fine, but it will simply eliminate the creative process except between you and a machine. And that will happen, because it's happening now in an indirect way. It's going to happen in a direct way. And unless architects get out in front of that and actually can say, and the kids that want to be architects say, I want to make beauty, I'm good at making beauty, and I need to be able to take the technology that's available to me and make it work for everybody else, I think we don't have a big future in architecture.
we started with, can you give some advice for the homeowners, and if we ended with, we don't have a future in architecture.
Duo brought us up, and
honest,
brought us down.
They're actually part of it. They're completely interrelated. In other words, if you want to do something in architecture, you can either wait for 10 years and get software to come to you, which probably will happen, or you can actually say humanity is important, human beings are important. And right now, there are people that know how to do this. And there are good architects out there, but I don't think we're very good at actually losing that sense of pretentiousness that I think we were steeped in school.
That's a good point.
Do you think that's, as you're talking here, I'm thinking a lot about the AIA and their mission. And
since I am FAIA?
Yeah, and you're part of this now, right? So
I'm the belly of the beast.
You are. A lot of the criticism that I hear is that the AIA, one of their jobs is to get people to realize that you need to use an architect. But we're clearly in 2018, we still have not really convinced people that that's important to do. So on an individual basis, and it all really does start with each and every one of us, right? Getting out there and doing talks and going to school and teaching and talking about how important it is to be an architect and to see an architect regarding design work. But we're not doing a good enough job. So what could the AIA be doing? What could we be doing to make people realize?
Well, I think you have to change the paradigm, because the truth is you don't need an architect. You don't need an architect. You need a doctor. You need a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You need an architect about as much as you need a real estate broker, or you need a banker, or you need a real estate agent.
Okay.
And as every day passes, you need us less, because as every day passes, artificial intelligence makes us less important. However, lawyers are finding this out too, by the way. I mean, LegalZoom and other places that essentially take the place of lawyers, or even doctors with WebMD. People are finding that the thing that makes sense, which is talk to a human being that actually has creative intelligence, talk to a human being, that actually is fading. The one thing we can do, and I think the AA has the mechanisms to do this, and I hope they are doing this, and we've tried to work with them to do this, is in creating the Custom Residential Architects Network, CRAN, and in actually doing some things with books and some things with talks. If they can take great architects and basically just have them in front of people talking about what they do, and those architects understand that their seminal desire to make beauty only is manifest in actual three-dimensional real things in this temporal plane by building things, and they know how to build things and what money means. There'll be a connection of desire on the part of non-architects and the desire of architects to make buildings happen that we touch. But if the idea is you will touch us only in the way we will allow you to touch us, because we only want to have a product design, we don't want to have a process that will connect people together. If that's the case, we have a limited future as architects. And the truth is that limited future is our past. I mean, we've never designed more than 2% or 5% of American homes. Never. And it's one of these things where we have to decide, is that part of our future? Or do we really want to have a future that's more about art appreciation or aesthetics or thought or communicating to each other in blogs? Do we want to have a future which is more like musicians? I mean, my son is a French horn player who actually earns his career by working for Schirmer, a great music catalog people, because there are a zillion musicians and 20 jobs.
Yeah,
and it's because most people don't think about playing having somebody come into their house and play the French horn while they have dinner. It's just not part of what we want to do, right? So, knowing that there are more people that want to do architecture than there are jobs for the traditional role of an architect, the truth of the matter is the role of the architect is going to change whether we want it to or not. It's changing now because of technology. And at the cutting edge, at the actual canary in the cave, at the prow of architecture is home design. Most number of buildings built, most number of people that use the buildings. Unless we show a relevancy there now, at this time of change, we're not going to be in control of our change. And so that's one of the reasons I'm working in building beauty in Sorrento, is because I think the more young people, more people like you doing things like this, by the way, this is exactly what is needed, is what you're doing right now. The more things like this happen, the more architects will realize, well, I can do things and I don't have to give up my integrity or sell out or pander or do the things that don't make other architects like me. You can actually do interesting things for great people, earn a living, and help to make the culture better by making better buildings. And home design is the first step on that ladder. We've designed many different types of buildings, but home design to me is for me the foundation of what we do. Now, for a lot of people, they don't want to deal with clients. They don't want to deal with individuals or the psychology is involved, the values that are involved. But I do. And some of us do. It's not viewed as a sacrifice. It's viewed as actually kind of like a great thing. We enjoy doing it. So, I mean, I assume you guys do too, or you wouldn't be doing this.
On your website, you talk about sort of your, I guess, the most important part of your work or your philosophy or whatever. And it was funny. You actually talked about no leaky roofs as being the central sort of tenet of your work. Talk about that a little bit. I thought that was kind of it was surprising. I didn't expect that. I thought you were going to talk about beauty or something else, but it was actually make sure the roof doesn't leak.
If a roof in a house, this is really about houses, by the way, because the truth is, I think the rules of other buildings are less absolute and clear. I mean, a good example is this. Frank Gehry did an incredibly wild and cool performance pavilion at Bard College. And it's wild and crazy and fabulous. 15 years ago. It's never stopped leaking. It's just never stopped leaking. Falling Water has, and I was at Falling Water a few years ago, it has something like 21 permanent and unfixable leaks that have to get maintained so they leak less every year. They just do. So then, so that's all fine. If you know that this will leak, I mean, if you buy a Frank Gehry building and you don't think it's going to leak, there's something wrong with you, not Frank Gehry. So the truth is that when you do houses for most people, the fundamental rule of a home is that it's protection. It's protection. It's protection against the world outside. It allows you to feel safe and comfortable. The minute a home leaks, it ceases to be a home and it's a sculpture. It becomes a thing which is a nice thing and makes space and it makes shape. But when it leaks, it's threatening now. It threatens you. It actually promises that you're spending money you don't want to spend to fix this thing. And you may have to fix it over and over and over again. And that ends up making what an architect does scary. And in my environment here in the Northeast, and I challenge anyone to say this is not true, flat roofs always leak more than pitched roofs. Always. Just always. Now, maybe in the desert, maybe where you don't have 100-degree temperature swings in a year, flat roofs are fantastic. They're definitely cheaper, and they're definitely easier to see. Architects can conceptualize better when they don't think about three-dimensional things or shedding water or all that kind of stuff. It makes it a lot easier. It's a lot more expressive to make flat, simple roofs. But when a house leaks, it ceases to have the love of its tenants. It just does. So, number one, is I've never designed a building with a flat roof. I will never design a building with a flat roof. I will basically use flat roofs that are given to me and make them better. But the truth is, flat roofs are, sadly, what I've said is flat roofs are of the devil. And basically so are gutters, by the way. Gutters are one of the worst things ever invented by any sentient animal. Whoever invented a gutter should be drawn and quartered on live television. But having said that, they're necessary, and I have one in my own house. I mean, you need gutters, but they're horrific things. They're terrible things. So
Doug, why don't you ask the last question for Duo?
I'm not sure. I'm just completely overwhelmed. One of the things that I was reading a description of one of your homes, and you talked about the architecture being a slave to no style. Talk a little bit about your aesthetic choices and design.
That's the huge question, and this gets murky. So people have been trained, all of us have been trained to think about the last millimeter that we see in a house, and that, or building. Forget about that. Everything, clothing, food. We look at the last edge of the molecule that is actually presented to us in the world. So we see that thing, and we instantly have some sort of judgment or evaluation of it. In architecture and in clothing and in food, often that word is style. And right now there's a weird reaction where for 20 or 30 years there's been essentially the gravitas in the elite part of the profession, the teaching part, the publishing part is towards an abstracted modernism, which is devoid of any reference whatsoever to any pre-existing anything. It is essentially a sculpture that is in the world that catches light, space, makes beauty in terms of abstraction where size doesn't matter, material doesn't matter. It's basically white and light and maybe some other aspects to it. That huge supertanker that is essentially sailing as fast as it can away from something called postmodernism that many people remember, that embrace different styles and materials and conceits, really, different preconceptions about things. Venturi and Rausch Brown basically sort of exposed to us in the 60s. The alternative to that has been formed in 5 or 6 architecture schools that now are doing something called traditional design, which involves vernacular, involves actually exact reproduction. People don't live in exact reproduction, nor do they live in super weird abstraction. They live somewhere in between. And the truth is, the vast majority of humanity loves things they know and loves things they're inspired by that they don't know. I think the magic of architecture comes when you think about everything, not about what is safe. And it's safe for architects to be high modernist, and it's safe for clients to be super traditional. I think the reality is that safety is not enough. You've got to get delight out of something. And if you want delight, it means relevance and also expression. So it's harder to design something which is new, fresh, and somehow understands and feels history. So the lack of style in me comes from the fact that architects call me a traditional designer, and homeowners call me a modern designer. And so essentially, it is what it is. What I do is not that easily defined, and so that's not by design. That's just what I do. So I think architects have to find their own way, what they feel comfortable with, but they should be transparent about it. And oftentimes we are doing a bait and switch, and we're saying, give me your money and I'll design this really cool thing. You will love it in the end. Trust me, you'll love it in the end, even though it looks weird. You'll trust me, just give me the money and I'll build the thing. It shouldn't work that way.
You know, you mentioned transparency. I think your website is the most transparent website I've ever seen in terms of putting your contracts on there, talking about your office culture, the kinds of works that you do, from budgets. And I was astounded. I've never seen such a thing. And I thought it was really refreshing just to see, you wonder how much it's going to cost. It's right here. This is a contract. This is what you would sign if you want to work with me. This is how much my retainer would be if your budget is this. Why did you do that? Why
that retainer list is awesome.
Well, I will tell you that's only 5% of my work gets that retainer list, because that's option 2. And that's actually for people that I'm trying to make them understand that if they want to spend a lot of money on me, they can. I also tell them if you want to spend less money on me, you can.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that there's a very funny story about the website, which has the added benefit of being true, which is that I spent 21 years actually making that contract, 21 years of writing it when I first started 30 years ago, then rewriting it, and then having experiences and rewriting it again and tweaking it and realizing, I made a mistake there. So what you see is a nice distillation, and other architects, by the way, you can too. You can take my contract and use it. Everything I have is whatever you want. I put on the website assuming I have no control over it. So anybody who wants to use whatever I have, that's fantastic. We also have a measuring technique we developed in the office. Probably 10 different architecture offices use the measuring technique we use, because it's pretty good and basic and ironclad and hard. But having said that, I did an article, first article I did for Common Edge, and it was called Architecture is Becoming a Lifestyle Choice. And it basically said that because of the irrelevancies and because of the traditions of the elite of the profession, we are graduating so many people who will never have jobs in architecture that it's actually becoming something which is a hobby, or it becomes a lifestyle, like being an actor or a musician or a fine artist. There's no money transacted and nothing really gets done except for self-expression. Self-expression is great, it's wonderful, but it's not being a builder. It is not it's not a building art. It is a self-perpetuating exploration of individual aesthetics and meaning and all that stuff, which is great, but it's not being an architect. I got roasted on Archinect. Roasted, hard trolled, major. So the hard trolling happens in 2 ways. One, on their blog, there were 200 entries, and they all said that I sucked. And basically, they particularly picked apart my old website. They said this guy is an irrelevant jackass because he doesn't even care enough about beauty to have a beautiful website. His website is awful. It's stupid. You just go to Foursquare, do a cool website. Well, then they had, which I only found out about later, they had a version of what you're doing now. They had a blog, a podcasty kind of thing, where for 20 minutes, the hipster young architects filleted me. Just said I was the most worthless piece of crap on the planet, and why should I even have a forum? And he's so untalented. You can see how bad his website is. It's so terrible. so that was fine. Great, whatever. But that was fresh in my mind. And I said, well, the website does kind of blow. This is not the one you saw. That website does kind of blow. It's basically just it's just basically a 1990s website that I kept putting crap on. And so there's tons and tons and tons of stuff on the website. Well, then somebody came to me and said, I really want to add on to my home. And I know her well enough that I said, and you really don't have a lot of money for an architect. No, I says, here's the deal.
Awesome.
I design your addition. You do my website. So essentially we got the same amount of value, basically. And I think the addition is going to be pretty nice. I know the website's pretty nice. But it took the simplicity of the website and just made it more transparent. And the truth is, I think those hipsters that really didn't like what I had before would have to say, well, at least it's clear now as opposed to being opaque. The other thing is it doesn't have any moving parts. It doesn't have any sound. It doesn't have any video. It doesn't have any scratch and sniff. There's actually nothing that's complicated or weird. So it's up all the time. It's never down. And it shows stuff from 30 years ago and stuff from yesterday. And so some of it's kind of awkward and some of it's kind of cool. They're mostly now shots taken by me, so their photography is not that great because the truth is it's expensive to do good photography. And I would rather spend the money on paying my staff and owning my building and doing work for the homeless or do work for the arts than pay money to make my website look good. And I said that to the kids that were screaming at me. I said, so if I do 30% of my work for not-for-profits and it would cost me $20,000 to get a website done and then $10,000 a year to maintain the website, I should maintain the website according to you and not do that much pro bono work, right?
What those morons say?
Crickets.
Yeah, of course.
It was like, you do free work? I said, by the way, that's the problems with is the pro bono aspect because they would like architects to be paid for everything, and the truth is much of what goes on in the world right now they can't afford what we have to offer, so we have to offer what we provide in a way which allows us to stay in business but helps the people that need it most, which are the people that really can't afford for us. So we do a ton of work. We do all the habitat work in New Haven for nothing for 25 years, and I've worked 50 or 100 housing groups. We start every project for nothing, and then as they get the work we take whatever the state or the municipality would give us. And we realize that cannot sustain this office. So we've got to have private work, which can actually help fund that. So
yeah.
We talked about your website a lot. So what is that website address?
It's just duodickinson.com. And it's Dickinson like Emily with an I and not ER like the running back and not EN like somebody I've never met. So it's duodickinson.com. And and in truth, when you write books, by the way, boys and girls, when you write books, you are on the web forever and ever, amen. So there are probably like a billion Duo Dickinson something or others out there for the last 30 years because of the books. Because publishers end up throwing your crap out there, and basically it's everywhere for everybody to see. So
yeah. Where do you get Duo from?
Oh well, that's a sad cultural reality, which it's indefensible. But my people, I am of the WASP world. So my people have a unique ethnocentric tradition, which is we actually never call our children by their given name. So I'm George Arthur Dickinson Jr. So before I was born, they couldn't call me George because my father's name George, and Junior's kind of trite. So they said, well, Duo, two. So before I was even born, I was called Duo. And so Duo has been it ever. And here's the sad truth. The sad truth was I knew when my father died 20 years ago, 28 years ago, I said to my wife, who's a lawyer, so I should change my name now. Because, I mean, now that he's gone, it's not going to be a diss to him to change my name. She said, oh, no, you don't worry about it. Anybody can call themselves anything they want. It's totally cool. And, on my wall, it's like my graduation stuff is George Duo Dickinson. My books all say Duo Dickinson, blah, blah, blah. Well, 9/11 happens. A week later, I'm at an airport. My ticket says Duo Dickinson. And my driver's license says George Dickinson. Oh, so that was an interesting hour of my life I'll never get back. Yeah. And the truth is now all my tickets are George Dickinson, and my name is Duo Dickinson. So
wow.
Well, there you go. Duo, D-U-O. Well, Duo, thank you so much. I know we can go on for much more, and I think we'll have to have you back in the future, but I really appreciate you doing this with us and learning more about you. I think what you've been doing is just amazing. It's really inspiring.
I tell you, my positive regard for you is based largely on jealousy, that basically that you guys have actually taken the ball and run with it to make a forum that is present. I mean, this is not easy what you're doing. The idea that you're creating something that can be relevant to people. God bless you. This is wonderful what you're doing. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. God bless you, Doug.
You. This has been really inspiring. What a super fun talk. I'd encourage everybody to go check out it's Common Edge, is that correct? And also Mockingbird.
Yep, and Mockingbird but you have to do this is what's weird. You do Mockingbird, you get a great bar in Manhattan. So what you want to do is you want to say Mockingbird Ministries, and you'll actually see that up there. Or just do Duo Dickinson Mockingbird or Duo Dickinson Common Edge. It'll pop up. Yeah,
the writing's great. I actually read an article you did on the Eagles and the Super Bowl. That was a really, really great. It was an inspiring article this morning to read. So thank you very much for your time.
Also had the added benefit of being true, by the way. So.
I had never heard that story. It's amazing. I told my wife this morning when I was done reading it. What a great story.
Oh, it just was killer.
Very inspiring.
So go to Mockingbird and read my thing about Nick Foles. Do it now.
Yeah, really good stuff.
Thank you, Duo. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
We stay in touch.
So you've been watching or listening to the Design Your Dream Home podcast with Doug and Steve. Feel free to send us a note. We love to hear from you. Ask us a question. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you or be talking to you next time.